Thank you, David and Robert. So no one is alone. You know, I have to admit, I've sort of been shaken up by the shootings that happened a few weeks ago. And as I've been thinking about it, I know that there's violence every day in the world somewhere. And yet somehow what happened a few weeks ago seemed so close to home. And the fact that it was about religious intolerance hit even harder. It sort of seems to raise the question of how do we handle intolerance? What do we do about it? And I was remembering a time, there was an author that was here several years ago, Lama Surya Das. He's a Jewish guy that practices Buddhism, and he's written a book called Awakening the Buddha Within. And so he had given this lovely talk about how to integrate this sense of your innate Buddha nature, which I think of as your innate Christ spirit. And I remember that there was a young man that was sitting right over there, and during the question and answer periods, he raised his hand and he asked the question. He said, I love the practice of Buddhism, but my family are fundamental Christians, evangelical. Every day they tell me I'm going to hell. And not only that, when I tell them to please just stop and let it go and let me be, they say they can't because their spiritual beliefs tell them that it is their job to try to save him. And so yeah, that word. Okay. Frustrated, fed up, irritated. He asked Lama Surya Das, he says, what on earth can I say to them to make them stop? And Surya stopped for a moment and he thought, and then he said, who knows? Maybe they're right. Who knows? It's all sort of a lifelong experiment, isn't it? That we're trying to figure out what our spiritual beliefs are. And so when we find something that seems just like what Connie was talking about, I related so much to what she was saying. When I found something for myself that seemed to transform my life, that I felt so sure that I had found it. And so I wondered about this idea of who knows, what if they are right? I like the idea that the motto at Unity Temple is, where diversity is praised and peace and harmony are the rewards. This is not a place where diversity is tolerated, where we just sort of pretend like it's okay, but it's celebrated. And so I find that it's easy to fall into this trap of, now that we've found Unity Temple and you're all sitting here and we're having such a good time and we're feeling that sense of spiritual uplifting. So it must be all those other people at those other churches who haven't quite got it yet, right? It's such a slippery slope. It's so easy to fall into that trap that whatever you think is right for everyone. This word, God, battles have been fought. And so I thought today, as we were thinking about how do we really celebrate diversity, it seemed like there were really three things that come up. And the first one is acceptance, And then I want to talk about love. And then I want to talk about action. And so in this idea of acceptance, I encourage us all to take a moment and realize what a grand experiment we're all having in this very moment. Do you realize that you may be sitting next to someone who has a very different belief than you do in God? What? They may not even believe in God at all. How radical is this, that on a Sunday morning that we can come together and we can sit in the same room and we can sing songs of praise and we can pray and meditate together, and we don't have to believe exactly the same thing. It was funny, after last Sunday, we were having a discussion in the Heritage Room, and many of you have often heard Duke say this, that he was raised with this idea that God was the old man in the sky, long beard, watching down upon us. And then he asked the question, what if that's right? Who are we to judge those that may think that that's who God is? Tolerance is maybe just saying that I'm going to allow people over there to be stupid. Oh, you thought that. But the sense of acceptance, that we would actually accept others exactly where they're at. And we would always have that little doubt in our mind that says, who knows? Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm wrong. Because when we believe that we are absolutely, positively right about something, we stop looking for alternative answers. And so I believe this idea of celebrating diversity is all about celebrating even the things that drive us crazy. To go beyond just simply tolerating other people's perspectives and views, but to celebrate that that's their life and that's what they believe. As long as they are not harming themselves or us, who are we to judge? And so this idea that what can we do in a situation of such grave intolerance and hatred that someone has gone out of their way to kill another human being because of their sense of outrage? What are we to do? We talked about it a few weeks ago that Jesus' primary message was to love wastefully. And when I reflect on that, it seems to me that it is to love without expectation, to love those that we might even think are unlovable. I started having this idea in my head that loving wastefully is like a superpower. Now, it's not as cool as like the X-Men, but it's something that we all have. And you don't have to dress up in tights or have a special outfit. You have a superpower called love. To love wastefully without expectations. And it can transform the way we experience ourselves, because we start with loving ourselves in that way, and then to change the world around us when we love everyone we come in contact with. 1 John 4:16 says, God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God, and God abides in them. So what if it was all just about love? that we can accept ourselves and accept each other wherever we are, with whatever spiritual belief you may have walked in here with today, that I can still love you wastefully. I can love you with all my heart, and I can have that sense that you love me, even though I might believe something completely different than you do. How awesome is that? I think like on the evolutionary scale, like we are this grand experiment of how people could live together in harmony and live on the infrastructure of love. I wanted to quote Charles Fillmore. In his book on Talks on Truth, he wants us to go even further because he talks about this idea of evil. It seems so comforting at times to think about the fact that, well, there's some good people in the world, and, well, there's some people that are evil, or there's evil lurking out there somewhere. And Charles Fillmore says, do not be afraid to pour out your love upon all the so-called evil in the world. He encourages us to deny the appearance of evil, to affirm the omnipotence and the omnipresence of love and goodness, to take no account of evil that appears in your life and your affairs. Refuse to see it as evil. That is the call to action that Charles Fillmore said 50 or 60 years ago, that we can refuse to see it as evil, that we can stand up and be counted as someone who loves and that uses love as the infrastructure of our life. And lastly, acceptance and love is about action. It's not enough to read about this stuff. It's not enough to just hear about it. We have to put it into action, into everyday life, into every moment, with every situation, with every person that we come in contact with. That's when it becomes a superpower. And I was thinking about a documentary I watched called The Interrupters. Some of you may have seen it. And it's about a doctor, an epidemiologist who worked in Africa on epidemics of tuberculosis, cholera, and AIDS. And so the way his brain thought was in the way of epidemics and how to stop epidemics from spreading further. And so when he came back to the United States, he decided that he wanted to do something completely different, exhausted and tired from having to solve such big problems. And yet what he found when he returned is he was struck by this persistent violence in certain areas of our communities. And people had become hardened to it. They had given up that violence was just a way of life. And yet, Dr. Gary Slutkin said, what if violence was just like a disease? And that the way to stop it was to cure it. That violence is in fact acts and looks exactly like an epidemic of cholera or tuberculosis. And so with this idea of trying to cure violence, he started this practice of training people in the inner city who could go out on the streets. And it is a quantitative fact that when violence strikes, when someone is murdered, then that murder causes anger and hatred to arise. And that murder leads to another murder, leads to another murder, leads to another murder. And so, in fact, this type of violence is an epidemic, and it is contagious, and it is spread. And so what Dr. Gary Slutkin found out was if you could stop the spread of the epidemic, you could actually stop people from murdering each other. And so he trained people that were there in the community that were well respected. Now, I'm a middle-aged white chick from the suburbs, so I'm probably not going to have any street cred. But he found people that had been in on the other side. He found a woman named Amina Matthews. Her father was the biggest drug warlord in her neighborhood, and she had actually been the drug enforcer. And Amina got pregnant, she had a child, and she converted to Islam. And in her conversion, she began to wake up and realize that maybe there was another way to be in the world. And what Amina was trained to do, actually when they were filming the documentary, they were following Amina around on the street, and they actually captured a young man being beaten to death. Caught in the disease of violence. And Amina immediately went into action. She contacted everybody. She sat with the family that was grieving and angry and enraged. And the young man's family was ready to look at, who did this to me? I want to go find the person. I want to kill them. I want retribution. And Amina would sit with them and encourage them that would do absolutely no good in relieving their grieving or bring their son, their brother, and their friend back. And so they've actually found that by interrupting the cycle of violence and infusing the situation with love, that they can stop the spread of the disease. And so I thought that we all are interrupters. We have this opportunity to go out into the world and be the change you want to see, to accept others wherever they might be at, to love wastefully, and to take action, even when it's difficult. And that's the best way to know God. So let's take those thoughts into meditation. So we can take this precious opportunity to just take some slow, full, deep breaths. And to feel that love and support that is all around you, just as you are radiating out love and support as well. So we take this precious time to simply reflect on these three ideas. That we can learn not to give up on ourselves or on others. That we can learn to practice acceptance. To even go so far as to celebrate the diversity among us. accepting ourselves and others exactly the way we are and they are in this moment. And then to apply this superpower of love we can love when it's easy, but we can also love when it's difficult. Even more important, to love when we might be faced with what is called evil. That we can practice having this deepest sense that we are worthy of love, each and every one of us. And everyone else is worthy of love as well. Not as a result of their actions, but as a fact of their humanity. To practice love wastefully, without expectations. And as we sit in the silence and remember that when we abide in love, that God abides in us. And we can tap into that wisdom, that knowledge, the strength and the courage to take whatever action is needed. Whatever action will relieve the most suffering and create the most good. To sit in the silence and reflect upon acceptance, love, and action in the silence. And so as we close the meditation, we can take with us this opportunity as we go out through this week and to reflect upon the very first unity truth principle, that there is one power and one presence in the universe. Some call it God, and some call it love. And so it is.
Seek ye first the kingdom of God's love. May